Rolling. So good morning, everybody.
Greetings.
There's will be people popping in as we move along here. My name is Deb Cruz, and I'm the president of JUUstice Washington, which is the UU State Action Network. And I welcome to our Environmental Justice Legislative Summit. All who come in the spirit of goodwill are welcome here. We invite not only our UU partners, but our other allies and partners to walk with us and to work together in achieving goals that will help us forge the pathway and maintain it to a future where the earth and all her beings are held in respect and in balance.
Oh, they're moving to Boise.
What?
Oh, that was me.
Okay. JUUstice Washington serves the UU congregations and their allies and partners in Washington State. We do networking and collaborating on a variety of justice efforts. Washington is a bit of a misnomer because we do work with other congregations across the Pacific Northwest region, as well as working with a number of national UU groups like UU Ministry for Earth, Side with Love and their climate folks, and Earth Ministry, which is the Interfaith Power and Light chapter for Washington State, and a whole variety of other allies and partners. I'd like to see if I can introduce some other board members. So I'm looking to see, I saw Ann here. Is she still here? Wave, Ann. Oh, okay. I guess not. Doug, oh, there's her picture. I see her picture. Okay. So we have Ann Hunley from Olympia UU and Douglas Mackey as well from Olympia UU. We have Erica Jackson Kirkendall, and she's not here right now, but she's with our Woodinville and East Shore congregations. John Hilke, who is also on our board, but he and Dee Dee had to move to North Carolina, so I don't know if he'll be here today. I'd also like to introduce Travis McPhee, who's also on our board and is also on staff, and L Parks, good, who is on staff. Elle and Travis will be working with me on the summit today. So if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to message them privately in the chat. And my thanks goes out to both of them for their patience with me and for the time and effort that they're putting not only into the summit today, but in a variety of other projects that we're working on. Your guys' support is really appreciated. And I'd also like to thank our guest speakers who it looks like they're all here. So we have Rep. Mike Chapman, Rep. Alex Remmel, Rep. Deborah Lakanoff, and Rep. Doglio for taking their time out of their busy schedules to be with us this morning. So we're going to go in with our opening reading and our chalice lighting. So Elle, if you want to go ahead and take over then, please.
Good morning, everyone. We will begin, as we often do, with circling up around the fire and a few words which come from our song earlier this morning. I invite you just to arrive again in your seat. Find where your breath is moving this morning, however deeply or quickly or slowly. With the light of this flame, may our intentions together rise greater than they do when we are apart. And from our music, you can look to the stars in search of answers, look for God and life on distant planets, have your faith in the ever after. But heaven's here on earth. We are the spirit, the collective conscience, We create the pain and the suffering and the beauty in this world, in our faith in humankind, in our respect for what is earthly, in our unfaltering belief in peace and love and understanding. Look around, believe in what you see. The kingdom is at hand. The promised land is already at your feet. We can and will become what we aspire to be. I've seen spirits, I've met angels, I've touched creations beautiful and wondrous, and been at places where I question all I think I know. But I believe this could be heaven. Heaven's here on earth. We are born inside the gates with the power to create life and to take it away. The world is our temple. The world is our church. Heaven is here on earth now with us. Welcome, welcome again. So glad to be here with all of you this morning. I will now read the land acknowledgement that we use at Whatcom County in Washington State, where Justice Washington resides, that we recite at the beginning of all gatherings. We acknowledge that this land is the land and territory of the Salish peoples. Their presence is imbued in these mountains, valleys, waterways, and shorelines. May we nurture our relationship with our Salish neighbors and the shared responsibilities to their homelands, where many of us reside today. For those of you, I see a lot of familiar faces, but if anyone here is unfamiliar with Justice Washington, we are the Unitarian Universalist State Action Network. Although Deb shared this little piece earlier. I'm actually just going to drop in the chat here what our guidelines for gathering are this morning, instead of re-explaining Justice Washington. If you could take a moment to look through these, they're the same that we use each time. There are gathering guidelines for how we come together. And we're coming together today to fulfill, in part, our ethical obligations to our principles and values in honoring the interdependent web of existence, of which we're all a part, also known as the UU seventh principle. This calls us to cherish, respect, and care for the earth and all beings, repairing harm and damage that has been done, and to preserve and protect those precious gifts we've been granted. Just some final logistics before I pass it over to our legislators. We'll spend the first part of the morning hearing from our legislators directly on some key pieces of legislation coming up in the state of Washington. Then around 10:15 or so, we'll have time for open Q&A with our legislators. At 10:30, we're going to leave for, we'll have a break. Coffee break, bio break, shake it off, get your questions sorted, have some quiet from 10:30 to 11. And when we return at 11, Travis will kick us off with details on how to turn our energy from this morning directly into action by going over how to implement the information from this morning with Justice Washington and our Take Action Network TAN plans, which he'll explain in more detail again at 11 a.m. And we'll form into strategy groups then that will go in, you'll be able to self-select into a breakout room of your choice and work on some of the topics of this morning and reconvene in the main room around 12:45, have a small closing at around 1 p.m. And we'll keep the Zoom conference room open for a time after that. Of course, if you want to stay or if you have any additional questions that don't come up in your breakout rooms. And for the whole morning from now through 1, if you have any tech difficulties or questions, again, feel free to message Travis or I privately or directly in the chat. And closed captions should also be available at the bottom of your screen for anyone who would like to turn that on now before we begin our panel. And again, so glad to have you all here this morning. I'll turn it back over to Deb so she can introduce our legislators and we will get started.
Okay, so we have some returning members. Rep. Alex Remmel. Go ahead, wave. Woo-hoo. Okay. Alex is with the 40th district, and he's on the Energy and Environmental Committee as well as several other committees. We have Rep. Deborah Lakanoff. Is she? I thought I saw her. Oh, I guess not. Oh, okay. Oh, there she is. Hi, Deborah. Okay, so, and Deborah is also with the 40th district, and she is on the Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee, as well as several other committees. We have Rep. Doglio. There she is. Hey, Beth. And she is with the 22nd district and also on the Environmental and Energy and Environmental Committee. And we have a new guest, somebody who's not familiar with us yet, and I promise I will go easy on him. But after this session, he's going to be fair game. So would like to welcome Rep. Chapman, Mike Chapman from 22nd district, no, 24th district. And he is the chair of the Natural Resources and Agricultural Committee. And Beth, by the way, is the chair for the Environmental and Energy and Environmental Committee. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to leap off with Rep. Chapman and Rep. Lakanoff, and you guys can spend the next, maybe 10, 12, 15 minutes talking about pieces of legislation that you think are critical that we should be aware of. And then we'll go into, when they're done, we'll go into and with Rep. Doglio and Rep. Remmel talking about energy and I know Alex is going to want to talk about buildings, and there's going to be a question about some legislation that's come up that looks like it's going to hamper what we passed last year. I think you're going to want to talk about that, I hope. And then after that, we'll have kind of a group discussion around the climate and the GMA bill, the Growth Management Act bill. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what our role can be in facilitating the breaching of the Snake River dams. So Mike and Deborah, if you want to.
I'll defer to the chairman of the Ag and Natural Resource Committee, my good friend, Chairman Chapman, maybe to kick us off, and then I'll do a follow-up after the chairman.
Did he freeze?
I think he might. Hey, Mike, are you frozen? He might be frozen there. Let's see if he can pop back. Maybe our whip can shoot him a text. There you go. That's a nice smile. Good morning. Good morning to all of you. Good morning, Rep. Remmel. Good morning, Chair Doglio. Really, really quite a pleasure to be here. I made it home to Anacortes last night. I started out early, but you guys would giggle a little bit. As I come from Olympia to Anacortes, I realized I've still got 2 or 3 Zooms to do. So I've got to pull off, do a Zoom. So the 2.5-hour drive actually is fun, turns into 5. Zooming on the side of at a gas station, I found where the Crankins climate change complex is in Everett. Yeah, it's a fun ride home, but that's the life of a legislator. And I get to my house and my little dog's so happy, and I'm so happy to be here in Anacortes just for a couple days. It's been a pleasure coming back to the state legislature. I can't tell you how happy we are to be with each other again. I had dinner with Speaker Jenkins the other night, and I don't think I've seen a smile such as hers that's full of happiness, gratitude, and having the opportunity to serve as the first woman speaker in Washington State. And also LGBTQ represents, and she represents well. She is like an auntie, a mother, a grandmother. Sometimes that, tough auntie that comes in and puts us all in line, but Speaker Jenkins does it with such grace that it really is a pleasure to be together. This year, we really focused on, there are a couple areas that the legislature really is looking at holistically all together. And Alex, as the whip, sits on the executive, I want to say the executive branch of the House, I would say, and he might touch on them a little bit. But for me, I think one of the most important areas that we're focusing on is equity and diversity, making sure that every bill that we pass really takes a look at our communities of color, our underrepresented communities, those communities in despair, and says, you know, how is this bill going to be incorporated to help that community? That's really something new that's come up. I think in my 3 terms, I've seen that evolve and grow. And I look to my other colleagues. I believe we had 30 new freshmen come in this year. I believe we have over 25 communities of color represented. You know, if you're gonna show up on House of Representatives, then show up. And I really am blessed to be surrounded by such incredible people. But I also want to say, and Alex might pop in here too, let me know and correct me, but I think the women represent a majority in the House, or close to it, Alex, and I'll let him kind of pop up on that because of his leadership role, but that's really exciting. It's been a pleasure serving with Chairman Chapman in Agriculture and Natural Resources. I've sat on that committee on all 3 terms. We really bring together the responsibility of managing our resources across this great state. The conversations, the bills, the legislation that we focus on in that committee really reflects the people who are sitting in that committee. And I value what they have to stay and share for what they have to share, and what the bills are being brought forth. You know, we're talking about anything from the safety of our natural resources, the protection of our natural resources, everything from cougars, wolves, to killer whales, to the great salmon. It stretches across how do we provide policy guidelines to be able to protect how we all walk together in this great state. We address you know, the supply of water across this great state and how we share that together, knowing that climate change is impacting the water supply across the state and across this nation. But how do we find that fine balance? I think if there's one word that really reflects our committee, and that's balance, that's fairness, that is bipartisanship. And it really comes from the leadership of the past chairman, Brian Blake. It comes from the current chairman now, Chairman Chapman. Just following along that line, you know, as we address balance, you know, we're bringing the voices together on agriculture and how do we sustain healthy agricultural practices and provide the capacity for the science and technology in the work that we're investing in bills and provisos and legislative tools. What can we better do for our agriculture community so we can sustain our farmlands, which is so important on the west side, from the 42nd all the way down to the 40th, throughout the 10th, down through the 39th, up the mountainside of the 39th, and then farther down Snohomish, all the way down to Green River through Carnation. You know, the back sides between the I-5 and the mountains there, all the way down to Olympia. And then as we head over, you know, Highway 12 and Highway 90 and Highway 20 to the east side. You know, the sustainability of salmon across this great state is important to all of us. I like to tease my farmers and say, you know, Washington was a salmon state way before it was an apple state. But gosh, we love an apple and a potato to go with our salmon. So how do we find, you know, those balances of sustaining salmon, protecting salmon, and bringing that forward? You know, we had you know, you'd think as you're sitting there, the interesting conversations we have on food safety, whether it's beef, whether it's salmon, whether it's dairy and raw milk. Chairman Chapman, I had never thought I'd be talking about raw milk and the safety of it. This native girl can't drink milk. So I'm like, well, I'm learning something new every day here. And I think that's the greatest part about serving the state legislature. There are a list of my bills. If you go to my website, you can go through a list of my bills. I know Chairman Chapman's going to talk about the leadership of our 2 incredible vice chairs that really bring a diverse voice to our committee. You can look at the Ag and Natural Resource Committee. You'll see all of us listed there. If you click on the membership, you'll see the list of bills. that all of our representatives sitting on the Ag and Natural Resource Committee are bringing forward. At the end of the day, I'm just really grateful to be in the place that I'm at. I'm really grateful to be able to work with my legislators. It's so good to be back. It's so good to be amongst. I was just thinking this morning, Deb, how I could say this. And, you know, coming from Alaska, I'm by myself most of the time. It's my daughter, my dog, you know, the ex. You know, it's really, I don't have family around me. That's how I was raised. And I think the legislature, my colleagues have become my family. That reach out like Speaker Jenkins to say, hey, I was worried about you. Are you doing okay? Alex sending me a text to make sure, hey, are you doing okay? And then him and I teasing about, you know, going back to exercising and planking and remember not to eat too much sugar. You know, it's the laughter of Beth Dolio and Chair Chapman in our committees that keeps those rough conversations at ease. So Deb, I'm just really grateful to be able to serve. Any questions you guys might have, please reach out to my office. If you guys ever come down, Deb, it'd be great to see you all. But yeah, take a look at my bills. As a Native American girl, you're going to see a lot of bills focusing on the Native American community. Native Americans have not been players in the state legislature other than fighting to sustain their voice and make sure that if bills are going forward, that their voices matter. I think, Deb, for the first time, we've got maybe 8 bills of my own that help Native American communities. I get to celebrate and sit next to the amazing Claudia Kaufman and the awesome Chris Stearns, who are the other 2 Native Americans serving. Senator Kaufman comes again. She came back again to serve us. And Chris Stearns comes out of Auburn City Council. He's Navajo. Claudia's Nez Perce. I'm Tlinkit and Aleut. So it's really great to have people who look like me, laugh like me, eat fish and miss fish like me, but overall build bills together. So close with saying, you know, if you're going to run, represent and truly represent who you are. My Tlinkit name across the bottom is JUUstice. It comes from those in-stream flow way up high where you have healthy habitat, where baby frogs, you know, live, where it's nice and green. And it comes from that springtime during that time of change. So it's goes so far back in on the women's side of my family that it's an honor to have it. But Washington State recognized my first name, which is JUUstice, and put it on my door as I walk into my office and on my label tag. So Alex, it's going to be fun teaching the speaker how to say my Tlinkit name. So if I ever get called upon on the floor, it'll be the first time, if the speaker does it, to call me by my first and real name. So we'll see if that happens. It'll be fun. But with that, I'll turn it over to my chairman, Chairman Chapman of the Ag and Natural Resource Committee. Chairman, it's good to see you. Good morning.
Welcome
Good
back.
morning. Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
Rural broadband, not always the most efficient. Well, maybe I'll just talk about the mechanics a little bit of chairing the committee that I chair and that Deborah serves on. We're a small committee on the Democrat side. We have 6 members, but I run it as really a team approach, and that's a core value I have. And so in essence, I do have 2 vice chairs, Representative Reeves, but she's primarily helping me to focus with the issues around DNR and timber management. The other vice chair is Representative Morgan, and she's helping me with agricultural issues. But really, in my mind, I have a 3rd vice chair, and that's Representative Lakonoff. But honestly, she's more than that. She's really the lead on salmon recovery, certainly in the House and probably really in the legislature. And I really look to her leadership. And she's been invaluable as we've wrestled with a few issues and trying to run the committee more like a team approach. And you know that slows us down a little bit. It forces us to listen to all the input and work through some sticky issues. But don't ever think that Representative Lakonoff is not effective, not passionate, not 120%. I mean, you can't even throw a number at how much she pours herself into working on issues around salmon recovery and other natural resource and environmental concerns as well. And I don't even see, probably I only see about 20% of what she works on. She's a force of nature and really one of the more tireless legislators. I get texts from her way too late that I can't reply to because I can't think anymore. But maybe one of the more tired. And even this morning, I'm like, Deborah, it's Saturday morning, hang on. But you know, that's part of the job. And so I just give her great credit. I think we are building a great working relationship and friendship. But I'm going to take every chance I can publicly to just let her know how valuable I think she is to the effort. And an effort we are making. But conversely, she also, agrees with my approach that we do have to listen to our friends on the other side of the aisle. So, I mean, in the House, we have 58 Democrats and we have 40 Republicans. We have almost a super majority. And so when we bring a bill to the House floor, it's going to pass, right? We can debate it for hours, but once Alex and Speaker Jenkins and the team have done their counts and bring the vote forward, it's going to pass. But in a committee like mine, it's 11 members, 6 Democrats and 5 Republicans. And even our Democratic colleagues, Deborah, we're not a monolith. We're very diverse. We have representative from Kirkland, the North Olympic Peninsula, Deborah, of course, Melanie's from South Tacoma, and Christine Reeves is from Federal Way. So if you think we all, just the 6 of us, see things the same on these issues, so we really do have to rely upon our friends on the other side of the aisle. And my ranking member is Representative Dent, who's a small buffalo rancher in outside of Moses Lake, but a really thoughtful individual who wants to find solutions, but definitely represents more of an ag economy. So we take our time, we listen, and we work together. And most of what we will pass this session will have a bipartisan element, only because, it's difficult not to when you only have a 6-5 majority on the committee. But this committee has a history. It's probably if you went back and just counted all the votes that came out of committee for the last 20 years, I would argue there's probably, other than maybe the capital budget, because everybody likes to spend money on capital projects in their district, it's probably the most bipartisan committee and always has been. And it really is because it's the juxtaposition of issues of which many of you are concerned about, but also the food production, food safety, the natural resource economy, salmon, orcas, habitat, shorelines. I mean, it takes some work to get through these issues. And there's a water. We're going to pass a water bill next week, and I think this should be celebrated. It's the Walla Walla. It's a Walla Walla water bill to help wine country primarily, but it's a Republican-sponsored bill that was agency requests from the Department of Ecology. Now that just doesn't happen in Olympia, or at least if it was an agency request, it's strongly supported by the Department of. So that's what we're aiming for. Good policy that both our state regulatory agencies and our friends on the other side of the aisle can come to agreement and say, this is going to help my district. This is good policy. And I think that when we vote that out of committee, it inevitably should be unanimous. But the state agency that regulates water in the state, primarily ecology, is also 100% on board. I think we as Washingtonians, and certainly we in the legislature, will be able to celebrate that moment. I fully expect that bill will move off the House floor and move over to the Senate. That's what we're looking for in my mind. And I think that's what Deborah and I work toward every day, always listening. She meets with, she's meeting with folks, I'm meeting with folks, we come back together, but also with the vice chair. So I'll stop there. I know we have lots of questions and we want to hear from Alex and Beth, but just more the mechanics for right now of how a committee works. And every day I've read an article. Don't criticize me for where I read this article, because it popped up in my news feed. It was an article out of a magazine called Texas Monthly. I do not subscribe, nor do I read a lot of it. But this article popped up of the 2 longest legislators currently serving in the Texas legislature. One is a Democrat woman, and one is an old stodgy white guy Republican. It's the most fascinating article if you're actually wonder what has happened to our politics and their perspective. And they even talk about their friendship. I'll wrap this up. I know I'm going way long, but if you do find, but it talks about the friendship they have forged and how many times they've not been friends because they fought each other tooth and nail. but how at the end of their careers, and I think they're both they're both in their 80s, they genuinely love each other from a collegial respect and have found many ways to move legislation forward together. And I think in America, we could use more of that. If they can do that in Texas, Deb and I can work pretty hard here. And I know Alex and Beth as well. We can do that in Washington. And so thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Where do I find the bills for the committee?
Yeah, we're the House Ag and Natural Resource Committee. So there's a House page.
I
And then
put
you
an
can look into both
updated,
Deb.
oh, I'm sorry, Representative
Oh,
Chapman.
go ahead.
I updated the link. Maybe you can check if the second one I posted is correct. I think it is, since I see bills with your name on it and others'
Yeah.
names on it.
Yeah. I mean, you do want to
Oh, okay,
follow
got
the
it,
Senate
got
side
it.
too. And it is the senator that represents my district that chairs the Senate committee. That's one little more thing that's important, is that everything that happens in the House, you have to work with your Senate compatriot ahead of time. And in my case, it's my senator. And, he and I don't see the world exactly the same as well. So that can be a challenge. And then a lot of times people are frustrated because, oh, there's a House bill and there's a Senate bill and the Senate had the hearing and the House isn't having the hearing. Why don't you guys like it? That has nothing to do with it. There's so many pieces of legislation that Kevin and I, Senator Vandeweghe and I, we kind of divide it up and we decide, we kind of look and say, this probably has an easier path if we want to move it in the House side. He'll say, well, I can move this on the Senate side because we know our committee. So we divide it up. So don't ever look at a bill and say, oh, the House didn't like it because they didn't hear it. We just don't have time. And we meet weekly.
Okay.
Kevin and I meet weekly. Kevin and I also meet weekly as chairs with the tribal lobbyists alone, the agricultural lobbyists alone, the timber lobbyists alone. And then he and I take all that information and then we meet alone and kind of cart our pathway then along with his vice chair and my vice chairs and leadership. So anyway, don't ever think that we don't like it because we didn't hear it. If the other side's hearing it, we've talked about it, we're looking at it. Okay. All right.
Okay, so quick question, your forestry person, your VP? Timber VP?
Yeah, Christine Reeves is helping me with forestry and timber because she's the former government affairs director for DNR.
Okay, Reeves.
And that's something she's interested in. And she's a former Patty Murray staffer out here on the North Olympic Peninsula. So she certainly knows timber issues and DNR issues really well. So she's just helping me keep it, man, another set of eyes and ears, but that everybody on the committee gets input, of course.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. Beth and Alex?
All right, great. Well, it was great to hear from our ag folks and their incredible leadership of that committee. I think I'll start off. We're a little bit different of a committee. It's a 9 to 6, and it's much more of a partisan committee that I am managing. Although I am doing everything possible to reach across the aisle to build relationship and try and bring our Republican colleagues into the work that we have to do to make our state a clean energy state and really meet those climate goals that were put into statute through the Climate Commitment Act by 2050. So it's a very exciting time. I feel like we have the framework, the policy framework in place to actually do what we need to do to maintain a sustainable planet. Now it's just really figuring out how to actually make it all work. So I'm going to start off with a couple of bills that are very specific to your focus on the Snake River dams. So the Snake River dams study that came out basically said, great idea, got to figure out how to replace that clean energy before we breach those dams. So there are two bills specifically that are designed to help us really build our infrastructure and our grid to bring that clean energy, to build the clean energy projects, and also to bring them to the places where we need energy. So 1216, sponsored by Representative Fitzgibbon, deals with siting. So with this siting bill, we're trying to determine where are conflict-free or as close to conflict-free places in our state that we can build different clean energy projects. So there's a lot of resistance, right, to building big wind farms and big solar farms. Where can we do that where we're not taking agricultural land, where we're not on irrigated ag land, where there's not significant cultural or any kind of cultural resources that are tribal? So it basically will help us identify those zones and get a little bit of a start on the permitting to help us actually site these clean energy projects in the least conflict zones. And then the transmission bill actually says, okay, now how are we going to get those clean energy resources to the places that need them? So that bill number is 1192. That I do believe that you'll see much more movement on that bill on the Senate side, whereas the siting bill, the 1216, is going to be a House side. So I think in terms of really trying to address the Snake River dams, which is, clearly a focus of your in today's meeting, I would really pay attention to those two bills. And while I'm on climate, I'd also say that the Climate Resiliency Bill 1170, which is sponsored by Representative Street, who is a new member to the legislature and also sits on the Environment Committee, that did move out of committee, and it helps this. It basically requires the state to update our climate resiliency plan. This really clearly dovetails nicely with the work that Representative Chapman and Representative Lacanoff are doing in the ag world, because of course we have a lot of resiliency issues that we need to look at as we're moving forward, because unfortunately we're in the position of having to adapt to climate change issues. And so we haven't wanted to talk about that so much, but unfortunately we are at that point, and the state is preparing to be as ready as we possibly can to deal with the impacts of climate. So that bill is 1170, and I believe it's on its way to the Appropriations Committee in the House.
Wow, that was fast.
Yeah. So, well, we only have 3 more weeks to get bills out of committee, so we are on a very tight time frame. I would just want to touch on my bill 1589, which does say that Puget Sound Energy, and I am working with Puget Sound Energy. In fact, they brought this bill to me, would not hook up gas to residences or commercial buildings starting July 1st, 2023. So that's this year. In a few months, they would just stop providing that service to their customer territory. And then there are a number of, it's a very exciting thing. It builds on the work that we did with the state building codes in this past year. And basically Puget Sound Energy says, we recognize that the state is moving to a decarbonized state. And so we're gonna get on the bandwagon, and we're gonna try and create some tools that actually help us decommission our gas side. So that's an exciting bill, 1589. We haven't had a hearing on that yet. I expect to have a hearing on that in week 5. So next week is week 4. Week 5 will be that bill. So that I'm gonna stop there with climate, because we have some really exciting things going on waste reduction. We have the RAP Act, which is 1131, and that will basically, the goal of it is to create a state-of-the-art recycling system, curbside recycling system throughout the state of Washington, where it's very clear what you can and can't recycle. And it creates a steady stream of recycled material that producers are now responsible, from another bill that we did, to actually put into their new packaging. So that is probably the biggest bill. It's about 180 pages. Yeah, it's super exciting. I mean, it puts the responsibility on the producers to actually pay for that system. So one other thing about that particular bill is that there is a bottle bill tucked inside of it, which would be you pay 10 cents on a plastic, aluminum, or glass bottle, and then you would be able to redeem that at grocery stores. There's also a plastics bill that gets rid of those the hotel little things of shampoo and conditioner and provides a much more sustainable. That bill is 1085. That bill did move out of committee. It's got a couple of other elements to it as well. It's been well negotiated. And I see my 6-minute timer. So I just want to get to one toxics bill, well, actually 2 toxics bills that I'm feeling really good about. You've probably potentially seen some coverage of the cosmetics bill. My vice chair, Representative Mena, is managing that bill. We did move that out of committee. It is 1047, and there's formaldehyde and lead in cosmetics. And we are basically saying, please start providing these products without those materials in them. There's definitely, you can do that. It's really unfortunate to think about that going on to our faces and bodies. Last bill is my own bill. It's an avgas bill. Again, it deals with lead. So what lead was, phased out from vehicle gas back in the 70s, but we're still using it in piston engines, airplanes. So seaplanes, and there is work going on at the federal level to do an endangerment finding on that lead, because we know that that's about 80% of the lead that is in our airshed right now comes from those airplanes. And I have done a bill that would phase that out and also require general aviation airports to have best use practices in place, and a couple of other things in the bill. And that bill number is 1554. And with that, I'll turn it over to Representative Rammel to talk about some of the exciting bills that he has also in the Environment Committee.
Thanks, Beth. Travis, how long do you want me to talk for?
As long as you.
Yeah, take your time. I mean, let's just say 6 minutes is, but if you have longer, we can work that out.
I can do less than that too. Thanks so much for the invitation to be here. And it's great to be here alongside my colleagues. Deborah, I do have to acknowledge that I have not been doing planks, and I have been eating more sugar during these days than you and I had planned together that we would do. And it's really been a pleasure to watch Rep. Dolio, now Chair Dolio, move into this leadership role this year. The job of chairing a committee is really one of watching the clock and trying to get a room full of people to all do stuff together at the same time. I think Mike Chapman has figured out how to make that look easy. It is not, and excited to see Beth grow into that role. And the work we're doing together is frankly really, really exciting because we have a strong majority in both chambers in the legislature, and that means we've got the opportunity to push forward on environmental justice and on climate justice, on meeting our treaty obligations to the First Peoples here in Washington State, and demonstrating to the rest of the country the way that can be done well. As Beth mentioned, I actually, before I jump into my own bills, I just really want to kind of put a star next to the bill that Beth talked about, 1589. Her bill on Puget Sound energy decarbonization would be first in the nation. If we pass that, it will be. It is huge that Puget Sound Energy has put pen to paper and put forward a solution. I don't agree with every piece of the solution that they've proposed. And we've got a lot of work to do to get that right, so that we are decarbonizing in a way that's fair to customers and does not put burdens on folks who can't afford it. But we can do that. And having a utility that is even willing to acknowledge that needs to happen and start making positive suggestions about how it can happen is absolutely game-changing. And so please do keep your eye on that one. Don't expect everybody to be excited with every iteration and every piece of that bill. But I think by the end of this year, I'm very hopeful that we're going to have a real solution that is first in the nation, and we will be seeing national headlines in other states following that example if we can get that right. I'll just mention a couple of smaller bills that I'm working on in the building decarbonization space. The first is House Bill 1391. We just had the first part of our hearing on Tuesday. I think we're going to continue that hearing next week. For those of you in Whatcom County area, you might be familiar with the Community Energy Challenge, which is kind of the model for that bill. But this bill would be expanded both services and territory compared to the Community Energy Challenge. For those of you not in Whatcom County, basically, it's an easy button for how do I do energy improvements on my home, on my small business. There are so many different resources coming from the federal government. Different utilities have different rebate programs. We've got half a dozen different state programs, some for low income customers, some for that are tax credits or grant programs. Some of them depend on where you live or what your heating source is. We want to make sure people get all of those resources put in one place and then work together to make sure that those are jobs that are created, that are paying living wages, that have apprenticeships and job training attached to them, and that that there are opportunities for women, minority-owned businesses to be leaders in implementing and doing that work. So I'm super excited about that one and looking forward to working the details and getting that through committee soon. I will also just flag one more bill that I'm hoping to introduce. Well, I will be introducing. I'm hoping to introduce it early next week, which is, so I don't have a bill number for it yet, but keep the eyes open for renewable energy alternative tax for wind farms and solar farms. So we've heard quite a bit about the challenges with siting these facilities, and some of that comes from local opposition. And part of the story that we sometimes hear is folks saying, hey, that's power for folks in other communities outside of our communities, and we get the consequences, or we have to look at it, but we're not getting the benefit. So this bill is transparently an attempt to say, how do we get more of that benefit to the communities where these systems are sited? And basically, we are taking this state tax that would have been collected and replacing it with an excise tax that we can give back to the tribes in the area, the local school district, and the county government. And so when we put wind farms and solar farms in there, that's going to be paying teachers in that community. And then the last thing I will mention, I'm happy to answer other questions because Deb asked about it. I think we do anticipate that there are going to be a number of bills looking to try to roll back the important work that the State Building Code Council has done over the last couple of years to help us dramatically improve the energy efficiency in new construction. Truth is, we have some of the most climate-friendly building codes and energy codes in the country now. And the State Code Council did economic analyses on those proposals. And we know that when we put in energy efficient appliances and energy efficiency standards for new construction, that saves people money over time. If we only look at first costs, then we're missing the most important part of the picture. And so we have done that analysis. These are smart policies that we have teams of experts that have done a lot of work to figure out how to get the details right. And the Code Council adopted those over the course of the last year. And I feel confident that we got those details right and we don't need the legislature to interfere. So we'll see some pushes to try and roll that back and undermine that good work. And I anticipate standing up against those proposals. So a little bit of defense, but mostly lots of opportunities to keep making progress in the legislature this year. Looking forward to detailed questions on the stuff that you all are interested in.
Okay, so I'm gonna snatch a couple questions for as starting off our Q&A session. On the PSE bill, has there been discussion about what we're gonna do about Colstrip?
Well, so Avista just sold their interest in Colstrip, their ownership of Colstrip. So Avista is out, and PSC, I believe, is already out as well. Plus, they are required by 2025. That is when TransAlta, the second stack, is going down, and the Clean Energy Transformation Act requires that there's zero coal in our portfolio as of 2025. So I believe Colstrip, at least for Washington, has been addressed, and we're good to go there. Because Avista just literally in the last week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know we've been fighting for years to get them to let go of that, so.
And Deb, if I could just clarify
Yeah.
one important detail that, those of us up in Whatcom County think of Puget Sound Energy as our electric company. And they are an electric company to something like not at least parts of 9 different counties in Washington. They also serve natural gas. To a number of counties in that region, over 1 million gas customers, I believe. So the bill that Rep. Dolio is working on relates more to
the
their
gas part of
natural
it?
gas, the natural gas half of their business, which we
Okay.
don't. We've got a different gas company up here, so that may be part of the confusion.
Okay.
I have a question, and there might not be a specific answer, but given that there's only 3 more weeks to get bills out, and we've heard we have a great list going into our afternoon action planning session, I'm wondering, part of what we're organizing around is getting folks, not only who are here this morning, but throughout our networks, plugged in on, say, getting email notifications about the bills that they're most interested in, making public comments, different ways to get more engaged besides just being aware of how to vote for the bill. I'm hearing you talk about, so many different topics that are spread out across the state. And are there any bills that you've already mentioned that would particularly benefit from some attention or letter writing? Or I hear you talk about the defense that might be coming up, pushing back against Washington's new climate friendly building codes. I think of that as being something that would fit in well with letters to the editor. So obviously one answer is everything can use all the attention, but if anything is standing out right now while we have you, like, oh, this bill, we really need, some voices to show up in this way. Does anything stand out like that right now?
Well, I would say the PSC bill 1589 is probably something, and I think you can talk about it in a way that really emphasize the fact that it is, moving people off of gas. The details are, like Alex said, we haven't worked all that out yet. And I think generally talking about siting and transmission as a really important key to our ability to deliver on our clean energy promises in future, and actually what's in statute. I think those 2 bills, while I think they're moving along okay, certainly doing more public education and helping people understand that, especially because, we also have communities that really don't want these projects in their communities. So I'd say those are kind of the 3 big ones.
Just to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, Representative Doglio, that when we're talking about siting and transmission, part of this is not just the role of regulatory bodies in implementing laws that have already been passed, but in specific cases like I'm thinking of the wind turbine bill, where the argument is about making sure that money is going to the most impacted community, and that we can
Yeah.
pass the bill, but or say we want to do that, but we're excited about the fact that these bills offer a direct excise tax. Like there's a direct route to making sure that folks are receiving funds or
Right. I think that's right.
okay.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, it's a brilliant bill that Alex is bringing forward here soon. I'm dying for him to drop the bill so that I can talk about it, because I have a lot of people in my office who talk about the loss of tax revenue, that the money's not coming into their communities, that, you know, the last thing they have left is view sheds, and they're trying to increase tourism, and then you have wind farms. It's you know, it's a significant issue, and that's part of what we want to do, is try and cite these in the least environmentally unfriendly friendly ways, in the most environmentally friendly ways, and not just looking at, but looking at all the things that people are bringing forward in that, whether it's cultural resources from the tribes or view sheds from our constituents.
And it sounds like it's emphasizing that we're not moving taxes from one district to another. We're simply asking producers to pay out of their profits, like the bottle bill that's tucked in the other one. It's, that the money is really making sure it doesn't go towards profits of the companies that are building these things, as opposed to making it this district should give up some of its money or energy, blah, blah, blah. It's making that argument, if I'm hearing correctly.
Yeah, I think, those two issues are slightly different. I think the point of charging producers for the recycling services is to encourage them to actually produce things that use less and have less things flowing through our homes. Ultimately, we want to be recovering what we can, but we also want to be reducing, right? That reduce, recycle, right? So slightly different issues, but yeah, basically trying to make sure that communities feel like they're reaping the benefits of having these projects in their communities, the Rep. Ramo bill, and then also holding producers responsible for the costs that are incurred with all the packaging and, frankly, unnecessary materials that they're using.
Thanks so much. That helps me organize. I see also that Michael Cox has had his hand up for a while. I'll pass it along.
Yeah, thank you. Real quick question, and maybe you addressed it. I live on Bainbridge Island, and we formed a green building task force to try to improve, obviously, the energy efficiency of homes. We ran up an issue that we could not be more stringent than the state energy code for residential buildings. Where is that? Is there something in the legislation that would rectify that, so we can do that if we deem it's the proper thing for us?
No, we do not have a bill that addresses that specific issue, but I think the focus of the work was in the building code, with the building code council in the last year, basically, eliminating more or less the use of gas in residential homes. That is where that is, but we are not, that is the stretch code that we were working on in the past couple of sessions. And so we've actually implemented that through the state building code. There is a process by which you can apply. Your city can actually petition the state building code council to go beyond residential codes. It is a laborious process, but it is possible to do that. So I think though that the best place to work on the residential is through the state building code council at this point, and also supporting the PSC bill that stops the hookup of gas. And Alex, I don't know, you were working on those bills last year, if you want to add to that or tell me I misinterpreted something.
I think you covered it all. There was a bill that Representative Davina Dewar ran last year that would have given us greater control for a better energy standard at the local level for residential. That bill did not make it through the Senate. We passed it out of the House, but it didn't get through the Senate. I think that a lot of, I won't call it low-hanging fruit, but the mid-hanging fruit in terms of energy efficiency has been picked by the State Code Council. And the best thing for us is not to have little pockets of very energy efficient communities, but to have a whole state code that's as efficient as possible.
Chair Dolio, I was going to say also, it might be interesting to shoot an email over to Paul Jewell and Carl Schroeder, who are the lobbyists for cities and counties, and maybe just let them know we got this question. And then, like Alex, I think you've done this a really lot, worked with local cities and councils, and say, you know, if you want to be involved, this is where you could go, this is where you can contact, etc. And just letting you guys know too, I think we have a large family of local council members. Used to sit on city council, county council, county commissions, and they have a huge voice in both the House and the Senate. And they really go back to the local conversations of how do we bring this state laws back home to either incorporate it and be implemented at the local level. So I really applaud some of those folks who've served at the local level, and they bring their expertise to the state level, so that voice is always shared and concerned, and their concerns are always shared. So just another helpful idea.
And I see, Mike Mallory, that you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Representatives, I have one request and one question. The request is that I'm working with a team trying to decarbonize school districts. And it is a disappointment that they are often kind of left out of the statutory scheme for rebates and grants and whatnot. For instance, yeah, I mean, they're huge energy users, mainly in transportation and heating. They heat these cavernous rooms. On the cap and trade grants, there was transportation available, but not for school districts. They should have been able to apply for bus grants. There was a mention of 1391 energy improvements for home and businesses, but school districts really aren't either one of those. And I think they need to be specifically included. So if they're not included, I would request that you keep school districts in mind. We need electric buses, and we need heat pump heating or some other renewable heating in those schools. My question is, last year, there is a problem because the state constitution and a statute says that you can't allow subsidized fuel switching. So the Snohomish County PUD says that they're prohibited from giving financial incentives to people who want to transition out of natural gas and into electric appliances, heating or whatever. Last year, there was a bill requested by the governor, 1767, but it died. As far as I can tell, it died in the Rules Committee, maybe because the statute they felt conflicted with the Constitution. I don't know, but is there a chance to address that either through a constitutional amendment or reviving that bill from last year so that electric utilities can offer incentives to people to switch from natural gas?
So thanks for those questions, Mike. That's you're definitely in the weeds and paying attention. Thanks for doing that. So that bill last year, the targeted electrification 1776 was my bill, and 1767, excuse me, you're right, it did die. And the challenge with that, I think it's good policy. It is not unconstitutional. We have a decision from the Attorney General's or an opinion from the Attorney General that it absolutely does meet constitutional muster. It's a clarification of authority that we think those utilities have. The only reason I'm not running it this year, again, I've run that bill 3 times and gotten it a little bit farther each time. The only reason we're not running it right now is because I don't think that the utilities will use it, and that comes down to there being so much other money already on the table for helping consumers make those transitions. And so I don't think the utilities are going to put additional resources in. As soon as I hear that utilities are interested in using it, we'll put the time and energy into passing that legislation. And I do think we've got potential and a path there in the future. With regards to your question about school districts, you're absolutely right. I think we have to fund that work and we have to support it at the state level. Thomason has a bill on school buses, zero emission school buses, and sort of setting a timeline and a plan for that. And then I've got a different bill for it is all campus energy systems, so includes some higher ed, some universities, but also community and technical colleges for district energy systems with a central heating plant. So it won't capture all school districts, but will provide additional support for those educational institutions that have a central heating plant. And that's House Bill 1390 to keep an eye on.
Thank you.
I would also just say that school buildings, if they're above 50,000 square feet, are must comply with the Clean Buildings Bill, which was my bill in 2019, I think. So I can't remember. And so they are, they're not exempt from that bill. And I would also say, even if we don't move on Rep. Sen's bill, I think she's doing a really great job advocating for CCA dollars to go towards converting school buses. And so that can also be done through the budget. So those CCA dollars are not allocated. It is up to the legislature to allocate those. The governor put out his plan, and we are hard at work trying to figure out how best to reduce emissions to meet our 7% reduction that's required in statute. So that there's another place for you to advocate as well, is on those CCA dollars, making sure that they go specifically to emission reduction programs, which school buses would comply with for sure.
I think also I might pop in, Deb. I've been working with the council presidents as we're talking through K through 12. And Alex, you might jump in here too with the work you're doing with Western Washington University with their carbon reduction in heating and electricity. State universities, their percentage is at 40-60, Mike, and that means a majority of the tuition that's being used by universities, one of the responsibilities they have is bringing their own public buildings, because their state buildings up to compliance with CCA, but their dorms are not under the responsibility of the state. That responsibility of all the dorm buildings falls underneath the university's responsibility, which is underneath revenue. Senator Rofus has been working with the state to have the state cover more of the costs for dorms and for their public buildings. So if we can shift that formula a little bit and put our dorms for our school kids out of the tuition and underneath the state responsibility, I've spoken to the governor's office about some of that CCA money, and changing that responsibility over a little bit more. Because if the universities have to pay for upgrading those dorms into green buildings, which they should do anyway. I don't even want to know I didn't know how bad the dorms were, Mike, until I put my freshman daughter into college, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here at these dorms? The responsibility of upgrading those the dorms and where the kids stay, their cafeterias, their multi-purpose, etc., continues to rise, then tuition will rise, because I've got to find a way to cover the costs. But Representative Ramel's also been working with Western Washington on an incredible project that I'll let him talk about, but just know that that's also in play, K through 12, and then state universities also having to come into compliance.
Can I just add, I'm invited to a panel, and I'd be remiss and would not like myself if I just didn't add for 30 seconds. I agree with and respect what everybody's saying, but I represent a district where blue tarps are a roofing material of choice, and where people are hanging on by a thread if they have a house. So when we talk about increasing energy codes and building codes, come to my district, come down to some of the tribal centers. The poverty that I represent, I get it, but please come walk in my shoes for a while too, in a district like mine that represents 3 counties, one that has the highest unemployment in the state consistently, Grays Harbor, and come see how. So we've got it's a mix, folks. It's a mix. I get it. Port Townsend, Port Angeles, Sequim, our houses are doing fine. But holy smokes, I live in places and we don't have enough housing, period. So every time we raise the costs and every time we put just come walk in my shoes sometimes, and I'll show you some areas where people can't even have a dry roof over their head if they have a house. People are living in sheds in my district, heating with coffee cans and garbage. So I get it. We're going to get there. But we also can't forget those that are a whole lot less fortunate than we are. And I would hope as a religious institution, that's also part of your mission. And let's make sure we can get those folks the help they need. But there's a lot of poverty out here, you guys, a lot. And to them, climate change is when the next storm rolls in and blows their blue tarp off their roof, which it happens on the coast all the time. Come out to the coastal communities that I represent sometime. And I know many of you have. I'm not preaching to you, but I hear all this. I get it. We want to do it. But there's a lot of hurting people in this state, and they see the legislature pontificating about these issues. And, they don't feel the love from us as much as we should. So that's what motivates me. I know we're out of time.
Well, not really, because I want to redirect the conversation back to the Snake River dams for a few minutes, if y'all can hang for a couple more minutes. I know that Rep. Doglio has put on 2 bills that'll impact the breaching of the dams, impact the breaching of the dams. Is there any other legislation out there that we should know about? And I do know that there is some activity around the capital budget to try to get studies done. And I think I know the studies are going to be geared towards energy and agriculture and transportation. Is there things that we should be looking for besides the 2 bills that Rep. Doglio?
I think there is a budget item that continues the conversation around the Snake River dams.
What does that mean? Sorry. When it comes to the capital budget, I know nothing.
Alex, are you?
Yeah, I can. And I recognize, John, you've got your hand raised. Do you have a question that we should factor into this conversation, or is that the next thing?
You're muted.
The next thing, the next thing, I'll let you talk. I mean, they're operating and transportation budgets, but you can talk about it.
Nope, that sounds like you know as much as I do on this, maybe more. So yeah, what we are able to do at the state government level is think about what does a future where we're not reliant on the services that those dams provide. What does that future look like? The federal government is going to make the decision that they're going to make. And we at the state government level do not, we're not the decision makers on when or whether to breach the dams. the decisions we can make are to say there are, potential consequences to those communities that we can plan to ameliorate or mitigate. So those are 3 budget items that I'm aware of. One relates to irrigation. I think it's a $500,000 study that we're hoping will be added to the operating budget. And then I think the governor's budget has requested 2 other studies, each at $5 million. One for Department of Commerce to do a study of replacing that clean energy, or at least carbon-free energy from those dams. And, in particular, that the energy that the dams provide is really valuable for load balancing, right? Because we can currently manage those dams to provide electricity at times when the grid especially needs it. So it's not just as easy as how many megawatts can we replace. It's really time of use that's important to consider there too. And so that would be one study, and then the other study is transportation related. And what would it take to replace especially for those farming communities that rely on barges, what would it take to replace those services? So that's what we can and I believe should do in preparation for whatever decisions that the federal government might choose to make there.
Okay, so in as far as timeline is concerned, is there some way we can tell everybody to hurry up? Because we're running out of time.
We can tell the federal government
Yeah.
whatever we want. I have not figured out a channel that's consistently reliable to get those messages through. I do think Senator Murray has been a point person in thinking about these issues. Sorry, I don't have a solid answer on that one.
As a legislator who was one of the first in Olympia to sign on to the letter, I think my name was first or second onto a letter a number of years ago advocating for removal of the snake dams. I hope you all are very pragmatic and appreciate the difficulties of DC. Holy smokes, they may not even pass a budget, a farm bill, or govern. And so the fact that we just had a couple of years with Democrat majority and this wasn't even, not much move forward on it. Do not think this is going to happen anytime soon through the federal government process. I hate to be, I think it's, I mean, they're going to be completely dysfunctional back there for 2 years. And I think I think they're going to blow our budget sky high at the end of the day and our credit rating. So, let's not even remotely think anything's coming out of DC around Snake River Dam removal.
I think also, working with Nez Perce, thank you, Chair Chapman. They've also shared that same sentiment, Chair Chapman, they're nervous just as well, but seeing Nez Perce leading the environmental community on the studies, doing the work, being careful, being thoughtful. Billy Frank Jr. told me, it takes a lot of patience to be an Indian. And my goodness, Deborah, you're a Tlingit woman. You need 10 times more patience for you. But we do it carefully. We do it right. I think the economic studies that are being done, if there were to be a decision that the state's taking, is really, it really shows dedication that whole Tri-Cities community, the tribes that are involved, that whole world there, in the next 30 years is going to shift and change depending on the decision that's made. And how do we as all Washingtonians look to that area and invest in that area? Hey, my battery's really dying, you guys. I'm down to 5%. I don't have electricity and I'm running my internet, so I've got to hop off. But I just wanted to tell all of you, thank you. To my esteemed colleagues, I love working with you guys. We are really quite blessed to be together in Olympia. And thank you all for all the good questions and all the good work you're doing. Deb, big hugs to you, and we'll talk soon.
Hey, I don't know if you guys are familiar with are you guys familiar with the Wild Olympics campaign to
the what?
The Wild Olympics campaign to identify huge part of the North Olympic Peninsula is under the Wild Olympics designation. It's a federal program, Wild and Scenic Rivers, just to show how difficult these are. That was introduced when I was a county commissioner in 2004, and Steve Theringer and I were the first local officials to sign on to that plan, 2004. passed the House twice in the 4 years the House was under Democrat control through the leadership of Derek Kilmer. And that thing was, Patty Murray was pushing as hard as she can till they finally passed the last bill last December. And Patty Murray's as powerful a Democrat in DC as there is. And they couldn't get Wild Olympics across the finish line out of the Senate. That is how difficult. That's just a designation of land that is currently not being used by anybody. It's currently under the Olympic National Forest. A designation of Wild Olympics since 2004. And with one of the most powerful senators, she still could not get it passed. And it's back to ground zero. So we're going to lose at least another 2 years because the House of Republicans. So when you're talking about removal of the snake dams, we have to take the approach that so many of my native friends, they're like, it took us 150 years to get into this mess. It's going to take us 150 years to get out of it. So we need to take the long approach. I know we live in a Twitter world and a Facebook world and a headline driven world, but Wild Olympics really just designated open land and we still can't get it through DC. That's how broken they are. So the actions at the state. So we'll keep working, we'll support it. I'm on file, multiple letters. Governor Inslee's done great, Senator Murray. But you have to be pragmatic, you guys. You have to understand how difficult that is of a lift. And it doesn't mean we're not fighting but we're going to fight that one for a while.
Yeah, I know, but our concern is our orcas. They don't have 150 years. And neither does our salmon. So we're kind of in a bind here to try to get as much done as soon as.
Which is why many of us at Deborah Laconif were working on all the things we can do at the state level. And Washington State is a lead, and we're the leader in salmon. We are the salmon state. We do more for salmon, and hundreds of millions of your dollars are being spent every biennium on salmon recovery efforts, including a bill Representative Laconif and I are negotiating to potentially put another $100 million into saving riparian areas on farmland. So Washington is doing its part, and there's a lot of, it's a huge focus for us, but I just, we have to be pragmatic. Yeah. Thank you for the work that you're doing, Rep. Chapman. I'm known as the pragmatic guy in Olympia, but it's not a bad,
we need that. So Gary, did you have a question?
Yes. What is the likelihood then? I'm a rail guy. I think that mass transportation and combined with electrification is the way to go. And I know Washington Can't Wait has several proposals for at least studying Amtrak's system. And I'm also a supporter of Solutionary Rails, 8-point proposal for switching the grain that's currently transported by the barges to rail and using renewable energy to eventually accomplish that. And because that is one of the chief obstacles and services that have to be replaced if we're going to breach the dams and recover the snakes. We're talking about a whole watershed here. The steelhead, the salmon, all the other fish that require a viable Snake River watershed, and then our tribal communities that also depend on that and call themselves the people of the salmon for that reason, and the orcas that Deb was just talking about. So what I'm asking is, and particularly of you, Alex, because you sit on the Transportation Committee, in which you're currently making decisions about getting these studies at least funded to move the ball forward. Where are we with regard to these rail issues? Thanks.
Yeah, great question. So in terms of the studies related to the short line rail in Eastern Washington, and the related to the Snake River, we did have a presentation from Solutionary Rail at the Transportation Committee. I will say that my sense is that it does not have all of the details we would need to at a legislative level to say this is a good plan that we're ready to sign on to, which is why I think we need to make the investment this year in developing that plan that the governor has requested. So it is in the governor's budget right now. I expect that at least the House version of the bill of the transportation budget will have money for planning in it. Whether it will look exactly like what the governor has proposed, I think it's too early to say, but I expect that we're going to start doing that planning work so that we can direct our investments in the coming years to make sure we're ready for that contingency if and when it happens. In terms of the larger, well, not the larger, but the other question about passenger rail service in Western Washington, I think I would say that we've had kind of this unnecessary food fight over the last 2 years about whether we're going to make investments in ultra high speed rail, which is federally funded. Which would be federally funded and require new transportation corridors. So we put some money into evaluating and planning for those corridors and acquiring those corridors at the state level. And we'll invest that money if and when we get federal resources. That's a 30-year project to really build that out. The climate can't wait. We should be doing that because long-term planning is worthwhile. And that's how we will get the future that our kids deserve. But we should also be working on the existing rail corridor, which we will never be able to get straight enough to be really ultra high speed, but we can get it better. And we should be making those investments too. I'm right there with you, Gary. We should have better train service in Western Washington, and we could have that relatively quickly if we continue making those investments, and we should do both.
But what's the likelihood that we'll get the investments to shift from our current very slow rail system to higher speed rail versus ultra high speed rail, which is really very expensive and, as you mentioned, would require a lot more land acquisition and whatnot? Is there any sense that we can improve the system at least, which is the low hanging fruit?
I think we can. I think we can be doing both and should be doing both. And I think there are investments in the transportation package that we passed last year that will move us in the direction of both. The transportation package is like a spending and investment plan. It's not the same thing as spending the plan. It's more like writing a budget. So we will need to actually allocate those dollars as they come in over the coming years. But I saw from the work that was in the Move Ahead Washington transportation package a commitment from legislators to support both the long-term ultra high-speed rail bullet trains, really, and the improvement to the existing corridor. So that we can have reliable and more frequent Amtrak service along the rail line as it exists right now.
Go ahead, Mike. And then I have a question for about the GMA. Go ahead. Who is jumping in?
Just want to know if there are any bills now or you're aware of any incentives for building biodigesters, both for municipal waste and for agricultural waste. We have tried to work on that here on where I live and are in need of some potential funding incentives. So I just wonder if you're aware of anything.
Jake Fye has a bill. I'll look up the number I'm not tracking all the details on it, so I'm not ready to say I fully support it, but there is a bill on that topic. I'll look up the number and put it in the chat.
Thank you.
So the climate GMA bill, is that still the 1181? As soon as probably Alex is done with the research on the other bill.
I
Or
don't know
does-
the bill number on that one off the top of my head. It's a Davina Dewar bill.
Yeah, it's excuse me, it's 1181. Improving the state's response to climate change by updating the state's planning framework. Has good sponsorship, was passed out of committee, the local government committee this week, and has been referred to appropriations in the House. And the Senate isn't doing as much with it, obviously, because it's a companion bill.
Okay. So are we going to get this one across the finish line this year?
You know, you can't
Say
say
yes.
in the first 3 weeks. Well, we passed a few bills. We passed a few off the House, but there's also, no matter what the House does, there's that pesky body across the rotunda. The
Yeah.
Senate has very different membership over there and
Yeah.
very different makeup. And so yeah.
Is it pretty similar to 1099?
I don't know. Alex probably knows
That's-
more.
That's my understanding, but I haven't actually sat down and done a side-by-side comparison on them.
Okay.
But my understanding, it is similar to the compromise that was reached. And what happened on that bill last year was that they reached a compromise between the House position and the Senate position on the very last day. And then just the process of getting the paperwork done, and then how long it will take physically to just introduce the legislation on the floor. And quite frankly, the Republican opposition to that bill was really strong, and they were clear that they were going to run out the clock for as long as possible. And on the last day, on every bill, each member is allowed to talk for as much as 3 minutes. And so multiply 3 minutes times, at that time, 41 Republicans, and we did not have time to pass the bill off the floor. If the session had ended at 2 a.m. instead of midnight, we could have passed it. It was very disappointing. It was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
That we missed the window by that narrow aperture. So there was a deal that folks had agreed to last year. And so, I share Rep. Chapman's distaste for making promises or commitments that we're not in a position to keep about what the other body will do, but I'm very grateful. I will tell you that.
Yeah, I was just searching. Searching for some hope. So does anybody else have any other questions? We're a little over time here.
Yeah, I have a question for Mike particularly. I'm a promoter of biochar here on the island. We're getting that going as a soil amendment and as a carbon, atmospheric carbon reduction solution. Is there anything currently in the legislature regarding advancing biochar for our forest management and also ag?
Yeah, we put some money to identify a couple pilot projects around the state. But I tell you, who's taking the lead is the Jamestown S'Klallam tribe, and they're partnering with I think at least one company, I think in your area. But they are there is some money if they were to get a project identified. There is some state money to encourage that work. But generally, right now, I think Jamestown might be the strongest proponent and leader for all the reasons you list. But the state does have and I'm not sure if when money doesn't get spent from one biennium to the other, if it still hangs around. I actually have to check on that, but we did put money in last biennium, a couple $1 million, I think, for a pilot project. And it could be that Jamestown and this company Alec actually tapped into that. I'll ask Ron Allen, and I talk to him all the time. I'll chat with him this week and I'll ask him about that. But
Thanks.
I'm sorry, I am gonna have to run here, but really appreciate everybody connecting. Thanks for taking the time to really track what we're doing and to, have great questions and hold us accountable. Deb, as always, thanks for pulling everybody together and keeping us organized. Mike, it is pleasure and honor to work alongside you. Love getting a chance to connect this way and work on this stuff with you. We'll see you soon.
that's the one thing I'll say. We have great respect. We will do, there's 58 members. We're not always going to agree on every issue because of our districts being, but we have great respect. And even when we do disagree, we don't throw, here's how you know the difference between Republicans and Democrats. A bill will be on the floor and there'll be some Republicans for the bill and some against it. And they'll fight among themselves in their floor speeches. When the Democrats say there's a bill and maybe 52 are going to vote yes and 6 are going to vote no, you know what the 6 do? We sit and listen to the debate. And and I'm usually one of the 6 maybe voting no, we sit and listen to the debate, but we do not speak against a bill that a majority of our colleagues want to pass, nor will we debate with ourselves. And I think that is part of being a team. You might not be able to vote for a bill because of your district or for some other reasons, but we don't. If Alex is working on a bill that he supports, I'm not going to work against him. And even if I'm going to vote no, I'm not going to speak against it. I'm not going to I'm not going to go to him and yell at him and tell him. I'm going to say he's working the bill that's good for his district. And I have a complicated district. My district's not 100% in agreement. I mean, and it's third largest by land size, the most politically diverse district in the state, with areas that voted 92% out of Port Townsend. Steve and I get 92%, and areas that we lose only getting 38%. So we have we do but we don't debate. Democrats will not debate against it. We will not speak against a bill that our colleagues want to vote for. That to me shows great respect in our caucus and through the leadership of people like Alex and Deborah and our speaker. And I think that's an important point that gets missed sometimes. And also our colleagues don't come back to us. How'd you vote against? They're respectful that in our district issues are different. So anyway, I know we all have to get going. I got to get going too. So thanks everyone. Oh, and by the way, Alex didn't say he's our new whip. He's the new majority whip.
I didn't see that on the website.
Yeah. So you have to be nice to him because he's the whip. And if you don't, if you're not nice to him, and if you do the research on where we came up with the phrase whip, it's probably not the best title in the world, Alex.
No, it's not. We should change it. It's, what it is? It's a community organizer role. It's event planning to a large extent. Mike was the deputy whip for a number of years. So he knows it's event planning.
But Alex is doing
how
a great
do we get
job.
Everybody together and working in the same direction.
But it is a powerful position. He sits at the leadership table. He's part of the team that makes the decisions on what our caucus is going to focus on. And when he talks about bills dying at the last minute, believe me, he'll be right in the mix of that, trying to figure out how we can negotiate to get bills across. So he's your guy as we get to floor action and end of the day. You want to be calling him constantly and texting him.
Oh, you guys are going to be getting lots of emails this session. So
once the chair does their job at committee level, we just got to sit back and watch the action. That's when Alex and the floor leader, Monica, those are the people you want to be pounding on. Not that once the committee work's done, it's our job's easy at that point. So, all right.
We love Alex. So
yeah, you should. You definitely should love him to death.
Thanks,
All
Alex.
right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much. Thank you to all of you. We're so grateful for your time and energy and your work, but sharing it with us and helping us take action as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you.